was my vision, and like what is the action that I can take today that does that like helps feed into that vision. Otherwise, it feels like you're on the ocean and you're just like feeling thrown about.
Freedom! So fresh, so new.
Where are you from, and how did you get started?
I'm from the western part of Michigan, specifically around a city called Grand Rapids. And Grand Rapids is a city that really like values. It feels like it's a city where people feel it's a little bit of a bubble, and so everyone feels very comfortable. But I think like what's good is that everyone feels really invested in the city. There's a lot of Michigan pride. There's a lot of West Michigan pride. There's a lot of Grand Rapids pride, which is just like, yeah, Detroit gets all the attention, but we seem to like do more. We actually like have to kind of pull ourselves together a little bit more. So I think there's a little bit of a little brother complex with Grand Rapids, which is great. So I was fortunate enough when I was 17 to get connected to a film production company here in Grand Rapids called Gorilla. And Gorilla at the time, and I mean, like, and still is, one of the better like film production companies in like Western Michigan especially, and then Michigan in general. And just like, because Michigan had film incentives back in the late 2000s, it kind of created this little mini film industry. Especially like, so Michigan had this insane incentive. So a lot of like people were like, oh my gosh, we're going to like invest all these resources.
When was that? That was
like the late 2000s, I believe, like 2007, 2008 or something like that.
Yeah. I was in Charleston. Some of that was happening in South Carolina too. There were new tax incentives.
Yeah. So everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're going to build studios. People got some movies came through town, like with Bruce Willis and 50 Cent. And then I think what happened is just that people got a lot of experience that a city like Grand Rapids didn't exactly warrant. Like it created this little pocket of knowledge. It was great. So Gorilla sprung out of that, and it was a great opportunity because I got connected into that community through my oldest brother. He knew the owner of the company, and I was interested in going into the film industry at 17. And I had done like a job shadow there, just like kind of interviewed the owner there. And when I was looking at my senior year of high school, it was like, oh, I want to intern somewhere and get more experience. And so I got an opportunity to intern before I had moved to Florida for a short few months because I wanted to go to school. Figured out that school wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, and there was a job opportunity back at Gorilla where I could take over a small portion of their business. Of like, they had like a little subsidiary company that was making videos to sell online to churches. So that was like a great little content. You just had to like write, direct, produce those. And that was great for me just because it got me in the office every single day and got me around some of the film shoots. I could PA on some of their bigger commercial shoots and then just be around everyone and figure out where my skills were.
What was it about that was interesting to you?
In my junior year of high school, I felt I was going towards violin performance as my desire. Like I wanted to go into college for violin performance. That was sort of where I was geared. I was a fine arts kid, like doing ballet, doing violin. And it was weird because I had done a school visit. I really enjoyed it. And then I kind of had this weird awakening moment, like just in a day, like on a regular day in like November. And I just felt really strongly that I could go into the music and violin performance. I could be okay at it. Like I was talented enough. I felt like if I worked hard enough, I could get into it. But I felt like with film, I felt like I could actually be really good in it. I felt like I had something to offer to the industry. I felt like I had a sense of direction. I felt like I could navigate good projects versus crappy projects. I was sort of frustrated with Christian film production because you had like a lot of your Facing the Giants and Fireproofs and I felt like I was just like, why does Christian content suck? Like, or it felt like it was sort of, it felt really agenda. It felt really like the quality was low. It was like, no one's gonna ever respect this if we don't make it good, like.
So were you originally thinking about like entering the industry in a faith-based context?
Of course, then you go off to adult life and you're like, religion, I don't know how would I think anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, it was more of like, I feel like we can communicate. I feel like film allows us to communicate truths to people. I feel like you can depict what it's like to be human, and people can see themselves in it, and they see something and they realize it's true. I think like we can see a story, and we go like, that feels true to me. Something about that experience feels authentic. It feels like it's my own experience. It helps draw me in. Like we were just talking about the movie Shame. The movie Shame helped me feel like, oh, even though that movie is very dark, it helped me at least go like, oh, that thought process those thoughts aren't unique to me, and actually helps me feel less alone. I feel some empathy in it. So that's what I felt like I could do in film, was like, oh, I really want to like help people feel less alone with film. I want to be able to pitch it, be able to do a concept, and somebody goes, oh, that's something that I struggle with, or that's something that I wrestle with. That's something that has tension in it that makes me interested to know more, to go deeper into something. Like, so that's the whole hope, is less, and now it's translated less into like faith, but more into exploration, discovery, questions, to be able to ask questions about what you believe, how you see the world, and then be able to go, like, I think films help to like open up those questions, to feel comfortable to explore.
The more specific, the more relatable. The really cliche stuff comes in when you're hiding, and when you're taking when you're throwing back the robe is when things get really specific, but also, they start to make other people feel it in their gut. And it's like, those are very, very special moments. I have some films that have done that. I think the first film that I really felt that in a visceral way, like in my body, I felt connected to it, was Terrence Malick, The Tree of Life.
Yeah, I felt it a lot, like the father-son dynamic, and that was a film that, and also because like, I think like the history of like my family is just like, that disconnection from father to son, and like, and how that has kind of carried on hurt. And even though like my relationship with parents was never anything hurtful or harmful, there's still like an emotional disconnect that felt like, oh, I want, like, this feels relatable. And it's all those little small moments of just about being a kid, and it's all those small moments about just being a family, and you're just like, oh, that feels real.
Looking at where you were at 17, or around that time that you just started like, entering the industry and doing your thing, what's something that you wish you knew?
That it's really going to be tough. Like, I mean, and everyone kind of tells you this, but like, it's really going to be tough to do the thing that you want to do. Like, it's really going to take a lot of courage on your part, and it's just going to, it's also going to take just a lot of just like self-belief. I know that I feel like that seems obvious, but for me, I want people to tell me when I'm ready, rather than just going like, you always have to sort of put forward what you want to be doing. You always got to like take that step, because when you're waiting for somebody to give it to you, then you're waiting for permission a lot of times, and it just doesn't help you to wait for permission.
It's a terminology problem. A lot of people think about, and I don't like to use the term breaking in because of this, because everyone's like, well, what's your breaking in story? And it's like,
sure.
It's like, there was a time I had to very intentionally stop focusing on breaking in and start focusing on starting up. It was like, I know people around me, I have a community, I have a network, and it might not be the best yet, but like, what can I do with the pieces that are available to me, and who can I help with this? Like, who's got something that I can actually elevate? And that led to some really interesting explorations, which, I mean, eventually led to how you and I ultimately really connected, was on, our Climb to the Top. It was because like, this was a collection of the people that were in our orbit. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and insane discipline to really stay focused and stay on track. So at one point, I just realized to myself that I just had to swallow this belief in how hard it was going to be, because I was like, I'm going to need to do it regardless. You know what I mean? So I think you get to a point where you have to understand how hard it's going to be. And after that, it's a point of acceptance and surrender to the fact that that's just the new normal.
You can look to other people and like and build relationships and say who can I partner with? Like, because I think like for myself, I don't do well in a vacuum, like by myself, because having that person with you to sort of shoulder it, feel like you're taking steps together. When you're tired, they're pushing forward. When they're tired, you're pushing forward. And it's like that is so important. So I feel like something, or I wish I would have known. And I kind of knew at the time, but it was just like, you need to do it with like other people. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's just like, I think it needs to be a specific person or close people, because when you try to do it alone, and maybe depending on your personality, maybe you love going alone, but like, I love feeling like, all right, we are heading in a direction together, and it feels like momentum, and it feels, powerful. And it doesn't, and when I start to wonder and question myself, this person can like chime in and say, no, you're doing great. Like, keep going. Like, at least for myself, I feel like I need somebody to go, no, they give you some perspective. They go, you're doing fine. Like,
Yeah.
this is just part of the path.
I think that's important though, because proximity is power. I mean, we know that, you know that the people that you're in orbit with dramatically impact the level of reach that you're going to have, because media is a team sport. Art is a team sport. If you want it to be, if you want people to see it, it's going to have to be beyond just you. That unlocks a lot of things though. It's not a limiting thing. It's thinking about how can we exponentially increase each other's capacity to move through this industry, through this space, through this creativity.
Right.
And it's such a gift though, because when you find partnerships, and I mean, like, it's important to just tinker at a point too, right? Because you've got to test relationships and see, like, who are you great at collaborating with? What do you think about the conversation in terms of, people asking where they should live?
Do I need to live in this environment? Because is this environment more helpful or harmful in terms of mental health? Even during this Corona time, being back in West Michigan, there's a certain weight that comes off your shoulders when you enter back into it and you're just kind of existing in it again. Don't move to an environment, don't move to a city because you want it, that whole like striving, or sort of like because you want people to give you something. Because I think that's what I moved into New York a little bit with the mentality of. And as I'm becoming more comfortable with who I am and what I need, what I want, and the kind of people that I want to be around, I think like when I'm coming at it from a place of like, what are these people going to give me? Like, this is going to make me who I'm supposed to be. I think that's a little bit more unhealthy. I just go like finding a city that like cultivates, like, I think that cultivates health. And so I feel like New York and LA, the reason why they're beneficial is that you're just close in proximity. You're going to, the atoms are going to bump into each other, which is awesome. That's how I met you. That's how I met a lot of people.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know how to do that just yet. Like, I look at somebody like Cole Webley, like the director, like he lives in like Northern California, or even Kendall, who lives in rural Mississippi, and it's obviously like they've spent some time in those epicenters.
Yeah.
But I think what we all like learn is that what we want to make doesn't always it doesn't depend on where we live. It depends on our desire to make the thing. It's building community where we are. I feel like when we're trying to look to places to make us who we are, then it's like then I think we've got to focus on the wrong thing. Be wherever you are in terms of like make community wherever you are, instead of looking to a location.
Is the city going to serve the type of life you want to live? And that includes things beyond just the professional. LA broke every expectation for me, because I had heard all the rhetoric about breaking in and navigating the industry, and it just turned out to be one relationship at a time. Like, the cavalry is not coming. It's more about what value are you bringing to the table? So many people go to a major market and they go, I'm here now. Like, everybody look at me, instead of going like, okay, I'm here now. Who can I help? Like, what's a gap that I can fill for someone with my unique superpowers? And that automatically positions you in a strategic place. Don't focus on climbing the ladder. Just help, be helpful. It's not about taking, it's about giving. And I think at every point in the journey, we have to think about what we're able to give right now.
Right.
But that's how you accomplish things. Like that's
Yeah. Like what I realized even in this last year, like 2019 was a great year, like work wise and financially and that kind of stuff. And I was like, awesome. Like because 2018 was a really dry year and a hard year. And it was like, this is a cliche, but it was just like, I was like, okay, you just, you made more money. You felt like you were more connected to those things. Like, do you feel better? And it's like, no, it's like, so then I'm like, all right, so what am I after? I want to be playful with where I live. I want to be able to go like, if this really doesn't matter, obviously you have to sometimes you're establishing yourself in a market, but like you're going, if this doesn't if the city I live in doesn't have a lot of bearing on my happiness, then like, let's go anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
let's live here. Let's live there.
Anybody with the right attitude can basically learn anything. So I don't necessarily need to look at, people that I like need to like get to. What I need to do is a vibe check. I need to see like if we can do the dance. And if we can do the dance, then anybody can learn anything, especially like energetic, creative people.
I really hate when somebody tries to throw their credentials at me or something like that. Or even when you're trying to hire for a crew and somebody is like, oh, this person has been in the business for 20 years or something like that. And like, because you can see people who have been in the business for 20 years and, they just have a bad attitude or like, you're just like, it's not always helpful. And, I just hate because I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? I can't trust just that alone, the 20 years, because there's so many things that go into this relationship being successful. Not just I've been here for a long time, because I could be the same thing, be like, well, I've been in this business since I was 18 years old, so that's 8 years. So like, let's make this. Let me flash some credentials, and it's like it means absolutely nothing because I haven't made X kind of product. I've done these kinds of projects. So it's like, it doesn't mean that I will automatically be a good fit for this because I've been in the business for so long.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't disqualify me from the ability to get something done that I haven't done before. Absolutely. If I have the right attitude and that kind of stuff. I remember a couple of years ago, the film production company here in West Michigan was like, where they were throwing around the idea of like producing a movie. And I was looking at another producer and he was a little bit more experienced and older. And I was like, I think we could probably do this. Like, of course we don't know a lot, but like, we also know a lot. So like we could, and now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't know that we would have been able to do it, but I was also like, it was that feeling of trust. Like, I feel like we can trust each other. I feel like we can talk to each other. I feel like we can figure this out because there's a mutual respect. There's a mutual understanding. There's a communication style here that will get us to where we need to go. Might be a little bit messy, but I think we could figure out those questions as we go.
What do we need to keep each other accountable for as we start getting deeper into it?
Are you making the stuff that matches your vision? Like, why or why not? Like, are you keeping what you want to be doing in front of you? Just because I think we get distracted by any sort of success, by all of a sudden new needs, or anything like that. It's funny when, if we're 25, 26, 27 years old and we're like, oh, I need to be making 100+ K a year. And you're like, why? Like, why do you need to be making that? You've told yourself that's what you need in order to survive this environment.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know what your life is, but also like, it's sort of ridiculous. It sort of becomes like you focus on the wrong thing. What I don't want for myself, what I don't want for others is to just get bogged down with the needless work, with the stuff that distracts us.
We got to de-romanticize it, right?
Right.
Everyone's got this big flowery view, and it's like success,
sure,
and lack of success are both distractions, right? It's like don't think success or lack of success or get caught up in your failures, and celebrate every win. Learn from every loss. but realize that those are just on either side of this pathway, and the pathway that you're on is a pathway to fulfillment, and hopefully you're walking in fulfillment. And all those
Right.
successes and failures in the meantime, they're just a part of the experience. Whatever your flow is, whether it's like, I want to go write 25 pages of this script today, or I want to be the go-to resource on, film finance or whatever.
Sure.
Learn functionally how to do that, but step into something that you can get into your flow and actually really express yourself. And that's it. That as long as that process is sustainable, then you're really winning. Because what better place to be than to be in a place where you're every day doing the process that you enjoy. Joy is simple. Joy is enjoying what you do. And that doesn't mean there aren't challenges and stuff that happen in that process, that like you're going to have shitty days. You're going to have sucky late nights, early mornings, but really got to focus on fulfillment.
A lot of people are realizing the relationships they do and do not have in their life. And I think, like, at least to me, I think that the ways that I feel fulfilled are loving, trusting relationships. Because those sharpen me, they make me inspired, and they challenge like my views. So those keep me fresh, and not like, hey, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you more productive? More of like, are you satisfied? Are you happy? Are you not chasing? Are you like walking in who you are? Like, and that's what I think is the most important thing. And if you have friends that are asking you those questions, then like, doesn't matter what the thing is, like because you're gonna get down to like, what is the most satisfying part of this process? Keep the fresh water flowing in your life, just because just don't get spiritually like stagnant, because like that's gonna keep you creating throughout your entire life. And creating doesn't mean the next big film. Creating just means like that tinkering kind of mind. You're just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to like make woodwork this thing. I'm gonna build this thing over here. Especially as we're getting started on this journey, and people our age are starting to find some success, and it's starting to become the mundanes. People are starting to have kids, whatever. All right, the mundanity is setting in right now. Like, you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years into your career. What are you going? How are you going to keep that fire fed? You keep the water fresh, because when you come into this world, you come into the creative world, you're a fresh body of water. You're like, oh, I'm not tainted. I'm not cynical.
What do you feel like is in the sights for you? What is something that you're sort of setting an intention to lean toward?
I know everybody said, it's like everybody says this, but it's just, for me, my intention would be towards developing a feature script. Like we talked about, work on stories that feel authentic to the human experience, that help us question or help us see ourselves. So I think like that is something that I go is going to be a challenge, because it's going to require just like a lot of hard work. It's going to require a lot of focus. And I think at the end of the day, it'll just be fun, because you're creating something out of nothing. I like fiction or scripted stuff more than I like unscripted stuff, like documentaries.
Yeah.
A lot of our world is branded docs and that kind of stuff, non-scripted stuff. I really like scripted stuff, because it's craftsmanship to it. It's building a world, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and when it works, it really works. And then it takes a lot of refinement, it takes a lot of focus, it takes a lot of perspective, and I think you can't fake your way through that. So I think there's this craftsmanship part of it that I really like, which is just that it requires a lot of testing it, testing the metal, testing the integrity of something before it can be made. Obviously, there's something to be said to just making something and doing it.
Sure.
But I think I love the idea of just working on something, making it better, and then giving it a shot.
You're designing. That's really the thing.
It's designing.
We're playing God in those moments, and
I think that's probably what I just want. What I want at the end of the day is just to play God, or
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like to help direct. It's just to help direct attention. I think like I think it's because when I've felt influenced by a concept, when I've felt influenced by an idea that was planted, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it opens up,
yeah,
a whole world, and I'm just like, oh man, like if I can help, if I have the ability to, plant some ideas to help bring about just an expansiveness like that seems super exciting to me. I think what's frustrating in the scripting process, and not that I know I'm so good at writing or anything like that. It's just more of when you're sitting down with a writing partner and you're like, hey, I think we're missing something here, and they're going, I don't think so, and you're just like, you're trying to like, you're like, no, we're missing something.
I
Don't you see?
promise.
Like, I know, and it's so hard to communicate and maybe sometimes concede that like, okay, I don't need this to work. You almost want to go in there and like just type out
Yeah,
the fix or something like that, or you just kind of like let it go and just like trust them and go, all right, like I don't have to be right on this, but like I do feel strongly that if we don't communicate this, it's
yeah,
I don't understand when directors feel like it's gonna just come through. I go, no, it's not.
yeah.
Like
Never.
never. When people are like, oh, I think it'll just come out that like this idea, you go, it won't. People can't read your mind.
It's
It's
not
like
in there,
communicating
bro.
with your partner. It's like, well, yeah. Oh my gosh, when it's not in there, no one will see it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my both the blessing and the curse of my personality is that I'm too logical, because it helps me spot problems, but it also can be all that I see is the logic of like dip, 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 dip.
What's a takeaway? What's a piece of advice you'd want to leave
Right,
people that are considering how they want to express themselves, or like
right.
stepping into maybe a new chapter in their career or their journey?
Something that I've been scared to do, but I think is super helpful is finding like the minimum viable product that you can do in your life, in terms of creating, like find a small creative action that you can do like once a week or something like that. I think it's just that what I've realized for myself is that being okay with your ideas, for others to see is so important. um, Being comfortable with your voice is so important. I think understanding what your voice is is like so crucial. Like, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? Can you communicate that well?
It is
So like, is everything like, who cares if you know are the most skilled, whatever, like that's great, that's awesome, that'll help you be able to do something. But if you're not comfortable, and I have found this with myself, if there's a discomfort with what your own voice is, it's going to be so tough to get where you want to go. Like if you're not willing to like speak out to like, this is what I have to say, and like, and it doesn't have to be pretty. I think it's just getting comfortable with like, this is what I think about this. Is if you're writing a script or writing a blog post or you're taking a picture, you just go, hey, I took this. This is mine. This is my expression. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to let it go. Like
yeah,
that, and that's the hard part, is creating something and then divorcing yourself from it.
that is the journey. That is the creative process. Doing
Right.
labor to put yourself in front of
Right. Do the
people,
labor.
and then removing yourself emotionally to the point that you can be satisfied with the work as everybody else beats on it for the rest of its life.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It's way easier said than done, and it's so cliche to do, but it's just like, yeah, finding little, because this is something that I'm on the journey of right now for myself, which is just like, oh yeah, like being comfortable with your voice is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because the medium is not gonna matter. And I think like looking at, yeah, not allowing what you don't have to not, to get in the way.
Yes.
That's like why I was trying to write those like really just like rough scripts or something like that. I was just like, oh, okay, like what's something I can do that's absolutely free?
It is the journey. So to say like, oh, I'm in a space where I'm figuring it out for myself. It's like, of course you are. That's perfect. That's exactly where you should be, because that's what it is to be a creative, especially a creative professional, but a creative person in general. always finding your voice, always being more and more dialed in to what it is you have to say. And your life experience will color that. So that process never ends. I applaud you for stepping into it. I also would just challenge everyone to accept the fact that this is the process. I mean, you're in the journey of developing creative identity, you know, and that will shift as your identity grows and changes and your experience grows and changes. So
Right.
get on the train of, you know, expressing yourself, build the courage and the discipline, all those things that it takes for that to be a space that you can enter habitually. And
Right. Habitually is so important because it's the whole, like, there's no magic sauce to, you know, to the thing. It like, that feels like a cliche too, but it's just like, listen, like, there's no magic sauce, so stop saying that there is, and just get moving a little bit and get going and get creative with it. Oh, one thing that like really helps, and at least like, and I go in and out of this all the time, which is, it's just like writing out like, what are my commitments, like, or like, what are my intent, like, what is my vision, and then what is my commitment based on vision. That's something I learned from like a business coach that I was working with like a year ago, which is just like, what do you want? And then what are the commitments that you can keep to yourself to do that? A lot of times when I feel unmoored or unanchored, it's because I'm not checking in with like, what is my vision, and like, what is the action that I can take today that does that like helps feed into that vision. Otherwise, it feels like you're on the ocean and you're just like feeling thrown about.
That's huge, man. And that's where accountability comes in. That's again where you got to have people in your favorites on your iPhone that you can call up and be like, yo, how am I doing? And also like, how are you doing? Are you keeping your vision? Are you keeping your commitments? Are you getting vulnerable and expressing yourself?
I know. I forget that part. I forget the accountability part. I just like, I live in my own little insular world with that. I always forget to be like, oh yeah, set up an accountability system.
You know, we do get very insular in the film industry. And I think it's because a lot of people try to like hack their way in. And a lot of people are like, they want to associate with you because of some sort of perceived like, I don't know, some sort of perceived like value in knowing you, or, you know, people are used to the people that just want to be around because like, oh, you're on whatever show, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And so we end up getting a little bit private about everything we do. And I don't blame people for being private, but I think what can happen is we don't feel like there's any room for us to be uncertain or to be like mid growth. Like we always feel like we got to come to the table fully formed. Like we've got to be born, you know, knowing how to talk or something. And it's like, there are examples in other verticals, you know, people that are especially in the entrepreneurial world, in the tech world, where we've created mastermind groups and communities designed to support each other. And now people even like Tim Thompson and Joel Pilger at RevThink have their 7 Ingredients group. And we're starting to see this happen inside of the film industry. And that's largely part of what we're doing with this new show is we want to create a group, a place where we can keep each other accountable and grow through these things together, and no shame. You got a question, you ask it.
What that demands of you is, if you're leading that community right now, is that you have to be unshakably disciplined in terms of that like creating a trusting environment. Because something is going to be said that makes somebody upset, or somebody's going to say something that's going to like piss somebody off. It's going to happen. I think about Pixar's like Brain Trust, you know, and Creativity Inc. Like, and I go, that requires a very disciplined approach. Like, trust doesn't come through accident. You know, it comes through a disciplined, being disciplined with your vulnerability. Like in terms of like, no, we are always making sure, because we will put up, you know, as humans, we just put up our walls.
Yeah.
You know, all the time, because we feel trusted. We're with our partner, with our spouse. You know, we're like, oh, we built such trust, and then one little thing happens, and then that you, like, you know, unintentionally put up a little wall because you feel embarrassed, you feel ashamed, you feel disconnected in some way, and like, you know, as you're fostering this community, it's just like, and you're sort of saying, I'm going to lead this, is like making sure that those walls don't go up. Like,
Yeah.
and you have to lead with that vulnerability, lead with being, those asking those silly questions, or those, seemingly silly questions.
Are we really allowing ourselves to be seen in the moments? Dude, the growth moments, the moments of transformation, the moments of change are the most powerful moments.
Right.
So if we're always, I don't like to come out half baked. So I don't like to show that part of the journey. Not
Sure.
naturally, but I realize that the people that have really poured into me professionally in my creativity are those who have said, here's all the Lego pieces, this is before it was built. This is during, while it was built, and you get to see how people have navigated these challenges themselves. I think we can do that for each other.
I was working with a buddy for a 6-month period. And he and I built this good rapport. Like, it felt like a good trust. Like, when I would get internally frustrated with him, we would take a walk around the block, and I would just like a marriage, I would be like, then you did this, and that made me frustrated with you, or whatever. And it was just like, but then, I still look back at that 6-month period with great fondness, because I was like, oh, there was great trust there, and therefore a feeling of safety to be able to try some things. So something that I feel like that the United States doesn't do, or at least that we don't spend a lot of time thinking about, is apprenticeship. Sort of this idea, this very age-old idea, thousands of years, a craftsman. We don't think of our life as a craftsman because we keep ourselves very insulated, and we're always wrapped up in ourselves. Is that it's so important for somebody who's younger, and even for you as peer to peer, to sort of enter into this relationship where it's like, hey, I see the potential in you. I see, not so I can use you, not so anything like that. I see that you have a desire to create, and I see that you have a willingness to work hard and that kind of stuff. So let me help you. Let's work out. Let us take, action together to get you where you want to go. Figure out what you don't know, or figure out where you want to go, and then figure out how to get there together. Figure out how to teach each other the skills. So something that I feel like that we should be doing, and I mean, I don't necessarily practice this in my own life, but it's just this idea of apprenticeship, which also looks a lot like mentorship. It just kind of goes hey, it's okay to create, and to fail, and because you're an apprentice, you're somebody who is finding their feet. You just like a goldsmith, you're going first you sweep the floors, and then you then you pick up the gold blocks, and then you learn what it looks like. And in some ways, I think we need to be doing that, which is just you need to be just being in a safe place where you can just do that thing, and we're not worried about timeline. We're not worried about this kind of stuff. We're just do the practice, and do it over and over and over again. So even going oh, how do we give you $500 or $1,000 to go do this thing that you want to do?
Yeah.
You have this idea all right, I want to help you get to where you want to go. Want you not to feel afraid to make something. Let's make the stakes low. Let's make what do you have in your resource, your toolkit that can get this done. So I think that's something that I've had some access to, but I feel would be so useful in this world. I feel the world needs to return to an apprenticeship model, because we're in such a professionalism. We're in such a mode in a world that's you got to be good, you got to be all these things, you can't mess up. It's you mess up once, you're out of here. We don't have time for that. We don't focus on it in our world, in our country. We're going to enter in this relationship, it's going to cost me something. As a mentor, you're going to break things, and that's going to be painful. You're going to say something to somebody that you shouldn't have, and now I'm going to we're going to repair that relationship. You're going to break my expensive,
wing dang.
wing dang, whatever. And it's that's so important, because it just allows for an honesty and a vulnerability, and a just a cultivation and deeper, I think just deeper craftsmanship. I think because we're all trying to protect our image, our ego, we're not actually getting as deep as we could. We're like, we get there sometimes, but like, we don't actually, because we don't feel safe. We're trying, like, I'm trying to make sure that I have enough money for this. Like, what if you didn't have to worry about that? What if you were actually in an environment? We're not talking about a place where you can be lazy. We're just talking about a place that you are, this is your time to mess up.
Yeah.
Really,
Well, I think that requires an intentionality because so often we're dealing with legitimately high stakes. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of people's reputations involved. And of course, that is an egoic thing. You are navigating ego, not necessarily in a destructive sense, but everyone's, coming to the table trying to say what they're there to say. And so intentionally creating atmospheres where people can learn and break things and realize that actually is the process. Like that's what this platform is about.
Freedom!